Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Anton, and welcome to today's video for Legends of Runeterra. We're almost there at the end of spoiler season. The new set's about to come out, Domination. So we got a few more cards to talk about. And we got some new cards today. No new champions, no new mechanics. Honestly, I'm just questioning if we'll even get a new keyword or anything, or a new mechanic. Because the new vocabulary, new keyword, it's not a keyword, but the new word, new, is not new. It's kind of hard to say all that and try to make it make sense. But yeah, kind of a little disappointed we haven't seen anything new yet. But we got some new cards today. Another Darkin weapon. Seems like every region is going to just have a Darkin weapon, I guess, by the end of all of these Darkin expansions. I think we still have like Freljord and Ionia, Bandle City, and more. But today is a Noxus and Demacia kind of day. So we got some good cards. So yeah, we should go and look at them. Probably not going to be too long of a video because, again, not that many new cards. And while I think some of them are really, really good, nothing overly complex to talk about. So what have we got here? We got what? 5 cards here? Yes, 5 cards here. First off, we have Legionary Charge. Now, I've seen people going back and forth on this card. I've seen people say this card is really good, and I've seen people say this card is mediocre. I think I'm leaning more towards I think it's really good. I like it. 2-mana burst speed spell, draw an ally with 5+ power, or grow an ally to 5 power this round. A 2-mana cycle for a very specific card seems pretty solid, or you can use it. I think the second line is what you don't want to use it for. Basically, I'm just going to grow my unit up to make sure it trades, which I think is a bad idea because you're probably getting 2 for 1 there. Basically, you attack in, your opponent blocks, you play Legionary Charge to grow your unit up so it actually trades with their unit. I think that's a bad plan. I think most of the time this is going to be a cycling card, which is why I think it's good, but I don't think it's OP. Like, 2 mana to draw a unit that has 5+ power. Most 5+ power units are going to be very... How to put this? Influential, very... They're going to do a lot, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Game swingy? I don't know. Sure, there's some cheap things that don't really do much, like Glory Seeker, I guess, but think about the other things. You can get your champions, of course. Big late game finishers like Incisive Tactician, the rally guy in Reputation. What else is there? There's also put this in a Swain deck. It draws Leviathan. I think it's a solid card. It's like a 1-of or a 2-of in a lot of decks that have solid targets that are only good targets. Like, I think you don't put this in Reputation, like an Ash LeBlanc deck, like, because you're probably playing Glory Seeker, and having this draw Glory Seeker just feels bad. You might still play it, though. Maybe you just don't play Glory Seeker in your Ash LeBlanc deck. But yeah, I think it is a solid card that's like a 1 or a 2-of in Noxus decks that have good targets and a lot of slots, or just like a decent amount of slots that are free and flex spots, and they don't mind playing what's basically a 2-mana draw 1. Next up, Brutal Skirmish. I've seen a lot of people, I think, in my personal opinion, I think people are overrating this card. Brutal Skirmish is a 3-mana fast spell. Destroy an enemy's equipment, an ally and that enemy strike each other. So basically, it's a more expensive single combat with equipment destruction on top of it. I've seen people just overrating this card. In my opinion, overrating this card. Yes, the way it's worded, it should be able to be used as a expensive single combat on units just have no equipment on them. My problem is, Noxus already has removal, and good removal at that. Like, you have the actual removal, like, you know, not Concerted, that's a Demacia card. Scorched Earth, Ravenous Flock, smaller removal like Death's Hand. And you might say, like, okay, but those aren't strikes. Yes, you're right. But there's Bloody Business and Whirling Death and the Cane strike spell as like 3 strikes you could consider in Noxus. I would rather play Bloody Business or Whirling Death over this card depending on my deck. First off, Noxus, I feel like Noxus just doesn't work well with single combat. Like a lot of Noxus units, it feels like to me are just, you know, high health or high attack, low health. And I feel like single combat style strikes want a decent amount of health. So basically, you know, they can strike and survive. What am I going to use my LeBlanc to strike? That sounds like a terrible idea. I guess for, now maybe in Ash, like Ash LeBlanc, you can play this like, because, you know, freezes and strikes seem pretty solid, but I don't know. I think Whirling Death is just better, you know, for anything like more aggressive Noxus decks. You would just play Whirling Death. You can get the unit out of the way of overwhelm units anyway. Maybe Bloody Business if you're a reputation deck anyway. Like I was talking about with this with Ash LeBlanc, I feel like I'd rather play Bloody Business. The only reason I think you should play this card over Whirling Death or Bloody Business is maybe you played over Whirling Death because you just would rather pay for a 3-mana single combat than a 4-mana just strike. And more importantly, I think you play this because of the equipment destruction. If there's a lot of Darkin weapons, and I guess to a lesser extent Improvise and maybe Forge, if Forge ever becomes good, you'll play this card. Like, I don't know, like Darkin Bloodletters, Darkin Lodestone stuff. Yeah, sure, play this card, go for it. But I'm not a big fan of this card. It does fill the niche of Region's equipment hate card, and it's still main deckable. Like, I think that's the best you can answer for a hate card, right? Like a silver, and that's not necessarily a silver bullet, but just a hate card, an equipment hate card. Good if there's equipment, okay if there's no equipment. So yeah, pretty solid. But I think it's overrated a little bit. Now, speaking of cards I don't think are overrated, Rune Squire. I can't remember his name. He's the... I'm pretty sure this is the 1-mana Reforge guy. I want to say it's like Pack Squire or something. Like, something Squire. But yeah, like the 1-mana 2/1. It's like Pack Squire, Blade Squire. I don't think it's like Fragment Squire, something like that. I'm pretty sure it's the same guy because, one, they look alike. And number 2, the flavor text is like, for months he'd slog through the cold and rain, blah, 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 which is pretty much what's going on in the 1-mana 2/1's artwork. But this guy, Rune Squire, 2-mana 2/1, Challenger, when I'm summoned to Reforge. There's a lot going on here and a lot that I like. Obviously, in the actual Riven decks, I think you play this as a 3-of. Right? Like, it reforges. Plus, you have, I'm gonna be honest with you, I can't remember her name. It's like, I don't think it's like Blade Mystic. The 2-mana 3/1, I think it's like Rune Mystic, Runes... It's not Rune Squire, Rune Weaver? Rune Mystic? Something like that. The 2-mana 3/1, you got her in the artwork. Comparing that card to Rune Squire, I still think you play her. I think you'll just play like 3 Rune Squires, 2 Rune Weavers, Rune Mystics, whatever her name is. As for Blade Squire, I'm going to call him Blade Squire. As for the 1-drop, I still think you should play him, but you got to be careful, I think, just to not overload your deck with too much early game, so you just run out of value. But this card's just really good. And I think it goes into non-Riven, non-Reforged decks. Because let's look at this in a non-Reforged deck. Let's look at it. Let's stop thinking about just Riven and think about the card in general. It is a Fleet Feather tracker that doesn't need to have another unit summoned. A 2-mana 2/1 with Challenger already. Fleet Feather tracker also used to actually have Challenger all the time. It was busted and got nerfed to what it is today. So, for comparing this to Fleet Feather Tracker, a card that still sees some play, for 1 extra mana, you don't have to activate it to give it Challenger, and it's reforging right away. I think this card is playable outside of Riven decks, because a 2-mana 2/1 Challenger kills a solid amount of stuff. And yes, it dies to pings, that is sad, but imagine if this guy was a 2/2. I think this card would be a 3 of in almost every single Noxus deck. It gives you discard fodder too. You can also argue that for, I don't know, PNZ decks that want to discard, or Vandals decks that want to discard, like, I don't know, Rumble decks maybe. So yeah, I really like this card. I think, yeah, Rumble actually probably really likes this card too. Thanks to Challenger, just can pick off things really, really easily, really well. Usually this, I feel like most of the time, this guy is just going to come down, give you the Blade Fragment, and trade with a 2-mana 3/2. I feel like that's what's going to happen most of the time, but I really like this. This is what I like in a 2-drop. A 2-drop that's pretty solid early and pretty decent in the late game. Because in the late game, you know, you do the Challenger thing. You play it, you got the Challenger in the late game, and he drags like a big annoying blocker out of the way for your other units. And I think even without being able, even if you don't think you'll be able to get the blade, the complete blade, whatever it's called, most of the fragments are still pretty good. Like giving +2/+0 to a unit, or quick attack, or overwhelm to a unit is pretty solid. So yeah, I think this is going to be a 3 of in a lot of Noxus decks that don't even care about Reforge, because it's just really, really good, and there's just a lot going, and it's a lot of value in one card. And our next card, Acadian Myths. I don't know how to evaluate this. First off, we finally got the Golden Spatula in LOR. If you don't know what it is, it's just usually an item in other League games, Riot games, like TFT and League. Acadian Myths is a 2-mana Demacia spell, burst speed. Create an Acadian Mirage in hand that costs 0 this round. Or create a Golden Spatula in hand. So Acadian Mirage is just the 3/2, so Weapon Master. Pretty simple there. Golden Spatula, on the other hand, is a 2-mana +3/+2 equipment. This is why I'm having a hard time evaluating this, because it's a solid equipment. 2 mana for +3/+2 of stats is decent, but that's it. It's just giving stats. And yes, I know, like with action and stuff, whatever, but I don't think I would play this with action. We're gonna actually see a card. I believe it's the next card. Why I'm not really a big fan of this card. That's better than Golden Spatula, in my opinion. Or you would play over Golden Spatula, Acadian Myths. I really just don't understand why this card, you would play this card over other stuff. I think the card's fine in a vacuum. I just think there are better options if you want to play this. The only reason I see you playing Acadian Myths is you're a catch deck? Like some kind of weird Demacia Ornn deck that cares about like forging and stuff, and you're playing catch, the 1 mana, give a unit +1/+1, or I think like equipped a 2 or less equipment from your hand or something. And Golden Spatula is exactly 2 mana, so maybe, but I don't know. So yeah, I don't know about this card. It's really hard for me to judge. I think it might just be a little too slow. And our last card for the day is another reason why I'm just not a fan of it. So Acadian Myths and Golden Spatula are Demacia cards. The Darkin weapon of today is also a Demacian card, the Darkin Aegis. 2 mana +1/+1. It gives you less stats than Golden Spatula, but it gives a keyword, and that keyword is tough. Tough is like basically an extra point of health. You also get to negate pretty much all pings to whatever's equipped. I think this card is really good. You can spend 5 mana to play this weapon as Jural. What is Jural? You can't just evaluate Darkin weapons in their weapon form alone. You have to look at the Darkin itself. So Jural. I heard a lot of people thought this was Pantheon at first when they first saw the artwork at a glance, and I was like, I can see it. I can see the Pantheon, the golden armor stuff. But Jural is a 5 mana 4/3 challenger with tough. A very, very small Darkin here. I think this is smallest of all the Darkin weapons. And the cheapest too at that. Like, I think Zolani is the second cheapest at 6 mana, but she's like a 7/7 overwhelm or something, 6/7 overwhelm, something like that. He has a very small health pool, 3 health, but he's got tough. But he does something else. Your opponent's spells cost 2 more while I'm attacking. He's kind of like a stony suppressor who suppresses a little bit harder, but he doesn't screw you over. Basically, he's not screwing over your Golden Aegis. The way I look at it is basically this is the fuck Ionia card. Oh, nice Ionia Telstones you have. Go ahead. Cast your Ionia Telstone and then cast Homecoming. That's what? 9 mana to cast all that or something, I think. So yeah, I really like this card. Even if it's just like, oh, you want a concussive palm? Some stuff to try and save you? Sure. Pay 6 mana instead. This is a really scary card. Geralt, I think, is just really good at just putting on a lot of pressure, and especially against spell-based decks, you know, like Ionia decks, Shadow Isle control decks, Darkness, etc., etc. And it doesn't affect you because you're probably casting stuff outside of combat like Golden Aegis. It does mess with your sharp side a bit, I guess, but no, wait, no, it doesn't, because it's only opponent spells. My bad, I've been reading this wrong entirely. It just never affects you at all. Sorry about that. He's even better than I thought. But yeah, I think it's really good. Like 2 mana +1/+1 with tough is really, really good. I think I feel like people underestimate tough a lot. We've seen things that have had tough or gave tough before that had to get nerfed. Most recent example, I think, is Yordle Stone Stackers or whatever it's called. The 2 mana, it's currently a 2/3 with impact. Used to be a 2 mana 2/2 with impact and tough. And they changed it to what it is now because it was just so good at just basically tough made it so it was really hard to kill on curve because pings wouldn't work. So yeah, I really like this card. Also, I guess you can argue it's also technically some Fiora support. Maybe you play this with Fiora Pantheon. Maybe you can try Taric Pantheon as well with this because you're going to probably play Golden Aegis. So I don't know. This is a scary card. I'm a control player. Demacia rally decks are scary, and this, I think, just slots right into Demacia rally decks. Now, granted, for Fiora Pantheon, they're already playing Darkin Lodestone. It's going to be kind of hard to find a balance, in my opinion, of how many Lodestones and how many Darkin Aegises you want, because Harazi is really good as well. And I think that was the last card. Yep. So like I said, not much to talk about, so not going to be too long of a video. Not much to break down, I guess, and analyze, because these are cards that just do stuff that we know. Acadian Myths, I guess, is the most complex here, but I just think it's a little too slow. And the fact that Darkin Aegis is also competing for the weapon slot, I think you just play Darkin Aegis pretty much any time you would consider playing Acadian Myths. But yeah, so Legionary Charge, I think, is a solid filler card for Noxus decks that have good hits and have a lot of flex spots. Brutal Skirmish is, I think, being overrated, but still decent for decks that are decent against decks that are playing a lot of Darkin weapons. So just if we're in a meta with a decent amount of equipment, you play Brutal Skirmish. I think Rune Squire is just a great card. I think Acadian Myths is just a little too expensive, especially compared to when Darkin Aegis is in the same regions. And I think Darkin Aegis is really great, and Geralt is really scary as a control player. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about these new cards. Maybe you think I'm overreacting to Geralt and Darkin Aegis. Maybe I'm not giving Acadian Myths and Golden Spatula or even Brutal Skirmish enough credit. Maybe you think Legionary Charge is not as good as I'm giving, and maybe you think Rune Squire is... Maybe you think I'm overrating Rune Squire. I'd love to hear your opinion down in the comments below. And if you guys just enjoyed the video in general, I'd love it if you could leave a like or a comment down below as well. And if you guys want to keep up with the Legends of Runeterra content, you can always go and subscribe to the channel as well. And if you want to watch me play some Legends of Runeterra, you can go and check me out over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Zenitton, where I stream pretty much every single day. Anyway, though, with that all said and done, thank you all again once more for watching this video, and talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.